Things you'll need: vice grips, needle nose pliers, cutting tool, flux paste, solder, cutting tool and deburring tool, sandpaper, steel wool or steel brush, and a torch with blue or yellow propane. I've got some old pipe here. First step is to prep and clean it. I'm going to start by taking some sandpaper, lightly wrapping it around the surface of the end that we want to clean, like so, and gently creating abrasion to it. You don't want to go too long or too hard, because the pipe nowadays is very thin. So we're just going to prep it slightly to remove contaminants from the pipe. If you're using our new pipe, it's still a good idea to do this, just to ensure that there are no contaminants from the factory still left around it. Same with the inside. You'll notice that this is pretty dirty on the inside. It's been sitting for a while. So we're going to go inside as well. Be careful not to cut yourself around the steel ring here, because it is sharp. If you're worried about that, wear some gloves or use a tool to get inside, like a steel brush. This one isn't ideal for it, but you can have a brush that'll go inside just to get a little bit of that dirt out. As you can see, still really dirty. So we're just going to shine it up. Once again, not going too thorough with it, as copper pipes nowadays, this is 3/4, a pretty thin material. The advantages of thinner pipe is that they heat up quicker and they're usually cheaper to buy. So you want to create abrasion around the surface until it starts to shine a little bit. I'm going to take this deburring tool. A lot of folks skip this step, but just to take the lip around the inside out. If you're using a long pipe that doesn't fall through so easily, it's a good habit to start deburring bottom down so that the burrs fall down instead of getting stuck inside your pipe and then in your water. Okay, now that that pipe's looking pretty clean, we're going to apply some paste to it. This paste is here to remove additional contaminants, and you want to be careful with it because it is acid paste and it will be corrosive to your skin. So having a little stick or just using the solder to clean it is not a bad idea. And you just need a thin skin of this flux around the pipe, like so. And close that up. Now we're going to prime this. Priming, what that is basically putting a little bit of solder around this pipe to ensure that when you stick it into your insert, there's already solder on the inside of the pipe. You're going to have some solder in your torch. It's important to move the other tools away. Probably you want to do it over a metal surface versus a wood surface. So you're going to create a little fire, burn your table. I've got my solder, I've got my flux acid paste here, and I've got a dry cloth, and we'll explain why in a minute. The first step is to heat the pipe. What I'm going to do, gently run the pipe through the flame to heat it up. Now this pipe, you'll see, will heat up pretty darn quick. Once that's done, once it's prepped enough, you're just going to rub it. You're just going to rub it around the end of the pipe here, like so. And when it's hot enough, then I'm going to take my dry cloth and gently just wipe. Just gently wipe away the excess. And I'm going to continue to do so around the pipe. Little tip here for you. If your pipe turns dark like mine just did when you're trying to prime it, and it's beating heavily, and it turns a dark brown color like this, what it means is that I didn't prep it adequately, and that contaminants are coming out of the pipe onto the surface and creating almost a dirty look to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, prep it, and prime it again. Once you've primed both surfaces with flux paste and then painted solder on every part of the surface so that there are no spaces available, you're going to slide the two inserts together. Now it's important, especially if you're using used pipe, not to press it back and forth and leverage it back and forth. Rather, try to get it to slide around the surface. Sometimes this can take a bit of work. Now, once the two surfaces are put back together and slid into the insert, especially with an elbow, make sure that it goes down a decent ways. The more coverage that you have on the inside of the pipe, the more likely that you will get all the crevices and avoid leakage, like so. Now the next step will be finally to solder our two pieces together. I'm going to need the torch, I'm going to heat it up, and you're going to need your solder handy. If at all possible, what we're going to do is solder downwards and let gravity suck into that crevice. The most important part of this step is to ensure that the pipe is adequately heated so that when we apply the solder, it seeps down almost like a liquid and sucks it and absorbs it within the crevice of the two connections. Right now what I'm doing is I'm heating the pipe adequately. This usually only takes a second. Now I'm going to slowly apply my solder away from the flame. You can quickly prime your solder by putting it under the flame and then painting it down. See how that goes in? That's perfectly hot, so that it just seeps in like water. And what this is doing is it's blocking any obstruction between any potential holes or gaps in between this pipe, which water will find its way through if it's not sealed correctly. And what you're going to do is you're going to work your way all the way around and make sure that you've got every part of this pipe well soldered. Now we're going to take the excess and brush it away. You want as clean of a solder mark as possible. And once again, you're just running it along and letting it absorb. You don't necessarily need a lot of solder for this, but make sure it's applied deliberately to the path of the two connections, like so. Now there's not a lot of excess here for me to wipe up, and that is what you want. If you do have a lot of excess overflowing and spilling along the sides, once again, just wipe it with a cloth. As you can see, I'm bringing it back and forth into the flame, ensuring that the metal stays just hot enough for me to get that nice solder all around that joint, like so. Now what we're going to do is turn our flame off. With our bucket of water, that's always handy when you're having work with flammable materials. You're just going to softly apply it and cool down that solder. Slightly cool it. Now you can let it dry by air and it'll dry pretty quickly. But if you're doing a lot of soldering in one day, it's a much more effective, time-effective strategy to cool your pipe. As you can see, all around, we have a nice solder that will hopefully maintain a good seal for water.